Hey, it is Kenny from Kenny's Audiophile Record Reviews. Thank you very much for viewing my channel. I really appreciate it. Please like and subscribe. I appreciate that as well. Sport my brother Jimi Hendrix hoodie for this video. Probably the greatest electric guitarist God placed on this earth. I know there's some other greats, you know, as Eric Clapton is one of them. There's many others, but I think I put Jimi Hendrix on the top of the list. But on this video, during this video, I'm going to explain how I became an audiophile and what shaped my musical taste throughout my life, especially during my younger years. I thought I'd get into that during this video. I think I've had a question or two about that since I've had this channel. But in full disclosure, I was born in 1960. And so I was lucky because I grew up during the what I think is the peak of the pop rock era, you know, the early 60s through the, you know, mid 70s, at least to my taste, to my ears. I think, in my opinion, the greatest era in music history was approximately between 1960, 59-60 through 1975. Through the from the start, or the not the start, but during the folk era, and then it advanced through the pop era of the early 60s, American sound, the British invasion sound, the R&B sound for Motown and other labels, you know, the Beatles, the Doors, the Who, the Association, and, you know, through the 70s with the Carpenters and James Taylor and you know, Steely Dan, so on and so forth. And I think the greatest era in music ended around when the 70s disco era started to take off. I'm not saying the disco era was bad or anything. I'm just saying I think that's where the golden era of music ended in my mind. But anyway, I'm going to get into what influenced me in terms of my musical taste and what were my influences in terms of me going to the path of becoming an audiophile. Let me get into that. And also, just so you know, I have an older sister and two older brothers, and my parents, obviously. And my father was a huge jazz fan. That's what he listened to. He didn't necessarily listen to anything else or go out of his way to listen to anything else. It's not like he disliked any of the other genres like R&B. I'm sure there was some artists and songs that he liked. But he was a jazz fan. He liked going to jazz clubs. That was his music, was jazz. When you got in my father's car, he had it on the local jazz station in Los Angeles, the greater LA area. So he was always listening to jazz. So that had an influence on me. I think what influences us is what we hear during our youth in other stages of our life. But that influenced me a lot when my father would listen to, when I stepped into his car, he would always be listening to jazz. So that had a huge influence on me. My mother, however, was different. She liked the, you know, the Burt Bacharach sound. She liked the Dionne Warwick sound and some of the softer music, maybe even the Carpenters. That was more her taste. Maybe the Motown sound as well, but maybe more of the on the softer end in terms of music. And she had an influence on me as well. I have two older brothers. One I had shared a room with when I was growing up. And he told me later on in life that some of the black stations that he wanted to listen to, he couldn't get good reception in our area. So as a compromise, he listened to some of the more pop-oriented music stations. There were out here in the greater LA area. There was a station called KGFJ, 93 KGFJ, I think it was. And so, through my brother, he always had his stereo, and it wasn't a high-end stereo. It was a Panasonic stereo. He always had his stereo tuned to that station, and so we would listen to the Association, the Beatles, the Doors, the Mamas and Papas, the Rascals, so on and so forth. So I got hooked on the pop sound at a very young age. I think that's amongst the beautiful, most creative, most satisfying to the ear music you can ever hear is 60s pop. And so that's how I kind of got really hooked on 60s pop, is through my brother having his radio turned to a pop station in the greater LA area. You know, all the hits when they were coming out, the Mamas and Papas, all those hits, Spiral Staircase, that song, I Love You More Today Than Yesterday, all those songs I used to hear when I was a little kid, right when they were coming out, because my brother used to listen to that station all the time. So that got me into pop. My father got me into jazz. My mother, she was, like I said, more on the soft side, the Burt Bacharach sound, the Dionne Warwick sound. And so all those influenced me in terms of my musical background. And I have another older brother. He's maybe 4 or 5 years older than me. And in the mid 70s, and wait a minute, before even that, when he was younger, he was listening to James Brown. He loved James Brown to death. So that he was a heavy into R&B. And then later on, he got into jazz, pure jazz, acoustic jazz, jazz fusion. He had his own, when he went away from college, he had his own radio program. I think it was called Spotlight on a station called KPFK, I think it was. I think it was late 70s, somewhere around that time frame. I could be wrong, but somewhere around that time frame. My brother Rick got heavy into jazz, and he had an older friend who influenced him in that direction as well. So through my brother, I got even more into jazz fusion, Flora Purim, Chick Corea, Miles Davis, all kind, Jeff Lorber fusion, Weather Report, and also into acoustic jazz as well. So for my older brother, my father, I was heavy into jazz, especially my older brother, and so all those influences that I heard that were surrounded me in my life, that influenced what I love and enjoy to this day. And then I explored on my own. I did a lot of musical explorations, or exploring, I should say, especially late in my high school years, early into my college years. I got heavily into Sergio Mendes in Brazil 66, during my high school years. I got, and I experimented, explored into other things like Claudie Langer or Andy Williams, folk music, just out of curiosity, classical music, just to get a different flavor, different taste, and see what's out there musically. And so that expanded my musical horizons, using my family's influence as a base. Then I explored on my own. I think that's why I have what I think as a vast musical taste, because my explorations, and I was not afraid to give some things a chance, even, easy listening, the Carpenters, Marriott, I should say, Percy Faith, Ferrante and Teicher, all those easy listening acts, Anita Kerr. I just explored because there's great music everywhere. And so you have to explore all these genres to discover them. Now, how I became an audiophile is the following. Throughout my life, I always had a decent stereo in my room through my brother. But my older brother, Rick, bought, I think when he started college, bought this high-end Sansui stereo system. And from there, I was hooked sight unseen. I saw that thing and I said, I got to have one of those. I couldn't get one because I was in high school, late high school, and going into college. In high school and college, students don't have that type of money. I used to, when I went to college, I had summer jobs, but I didn't work during the school year so I can, be a successful student. I lived at home, thank God. The university I went to was close to home, so I could live at home. So the money I did have, I bought something for my system every now and then, but nothing great and grand. But I did a lot of exploring musically during that time. But, for example, I bought my Carver C9, saw my shelf up there when I was in college, and maybe a few other things, but nothing great and grand. And then when I finally graduated from college in the in the mid-'80s. They have 2 degrees. One's in computer science and one in math. And I was working as a software design engineer and still living at home, saving to buy a house. I was able to buy some higher-end stuff, like my Revox reel-to-reel, you know, some of my DBX equipment, so on and so forth. And so through my brother, though, that set the foundation of my audiophile life. Matter of fact, I didn't even know what an audiophile was when I saw my brother's system. But he was an inspiration in terms of me becoming an audiophile through the system he had. And I think he had approximately maybe 1,500 or 2,000 records. And I thought that was the most records ever seen at the time. I think it was. And so that got me heavy into record collecting, because I wanted to be like my brother. I wanted a big record collection too, and I was heavy in music, so it was a natural fit. So I think my brother, older brother, was the biggest influence in terms of me becoming an audiophile. My system far surpassed what he has now, and my record I don't think he even has his record collection these days. But my collection kind of over here surpassed his as well. But I give him all the credit, and my family too, my father and my mother, my older brother, not so much my younger sister because she was younger than me, but I give my entire family the credit for me becoming audiophile and a music lover. Again, especially my brother, who set the foundation, the audiophile foundation, when I first saw his high-end Sansui system in his record collection. And that got me on my path, and I was hooked ever since. And my parents passed away. I think my mother passed away 23 years ago, and my father approximately 10 years ago. And I carry him with me all the time. And they will always be a big influence on my life. But that is my background as an audiophile and a music lover and a record collector. Thank you for viewing my video. God bless, love, peace to all.